Why do empaths keep loving those who secretly fear them? This question touches the very marrow of the human soul, for it reveals a paradox that lives in the depths of the unconscious. I want you to imagine with me that you are standing in a hall of mirrors, each mirror reflecting not only your face but the secret tremors of those around you. You extend your love, your compassion, your tender willingness to embrace the wounds of others, yet in the silent, hidden places of their being, there is fear. They fear you not because you are cruel, but because you are unyieldingly transparent, because you reflect back to them the truth of themselves, which they cannot bear to look upon. And still, you love them. This drama is not a trivial matter of failed relationships or mismatched personalities. It is a profound psychic pattern, an archetypal encounter between light and shadow, between the healer and the one who flees from healing, between the soul that opens and the soul that recoils. Empathy is a dangerous gift, for it penetrates where words cannot go, and in doing so, it awakens forces in the other that lie dormant. To be empathic is to carry within oneself a mirror of the collective unconscious. When you draw near to another, you become the stage upon which their hidden fears perform, and so they fear you, not because of who you are, but because of the psychic forces you summon into their awareness. Let us descend more deeply. The empath, who has often walked through the fire of suffering, develops sensitivity not as a mere trait, but as a survival strategy. The infant who felt the moods of the parent before a word was spoken learned to scan the air like a seismograph, registering invisible tremors of emotion. This child, in order to survive, opened the gates of perception so wide that nothing could be missed. That child grew into the adult who can feel the faintest vibration of another's sorrow or rage, who can anticipate rejection before it takes form, who can soothe with presence even before being asked. But here lies the double edge. The very capacity that makes the empath a source of love also makes them a threat. For the unconscious of the other senses, even if they do not know it consciously, that they are seen, and nothing terrifies the ego more than being seen beyond its mask. I recall countless times when adolescents came to me speaking of the inexplicable hostility they faced after offering kindness. They could not understand why those they loved responded with suspicion, or why intimacy gave birth to distance. What they were encountering was not personal failure, but the resistance of the shadow. The empath awakens in others the archetype of the shadow, the rejected, disowned elements of the psyche. To be loved by an empath is to be brought into confrontation with one's own denied material. And thus, love is met with fear. Imagine a dream where you are in a cathedral of light and people gather around you to receive warmth, but as the light spreads, some turn away, shielding their eyes, insisting that you are dangerous. They whisper of your intensity, your strange power. In truth, it is not the light that wounds them, but the unveiling of their own darkness that the light makes visible. This is not merely poetic, it is the drama of the unconscious enacted in countless relationships. The empath, radiant with openness, threatens the fragile defenses of those who live in repression. And repression always breeds fear. But why then Do empaths continue to love those who fear them? The answer lies not in weakness, but in archetypal destiny. The empath is drawn again and again to the very souls who cannot receive them, because in this encounter lies the echo of their own childhood wound. The unconscious seeks to recreate in adult form the original drama of love withheld, love feared, love punished. The psyche is not interested in comfort, it is interested in wholeness. And so it orchestrates these encounters in order that the empath might finally become conscious of the pattern and withdraw their energy from the endless repetition until consciousness arises. However, the empath loves compulsively, repeating the wound of the inner child in every embrace. There is something profoundly mystical here, for the empath is not merely an individual, they are a vessel of the self, the deeper organizing principle of the psyche. The self sends them again and again into the crucible of impossible love so that they may discover the limits of their gift. Empathy without discernment is a trap. To love endlessly those who cannot receive love is to pour the sacred oil upon barren ground, and yet only through this barren experience does the empath begin to realize that the task is not to rescue others, but to rescue oneself from the compulsion to rescue. I must speak also of projection. The one who fears the empath projects upon them the power of judgment. You see too much. They feel, you see the part of me I cannot face. And so the empath is made into an enemy, a saucer, a figure of suspicion. This dynamic belongs to the archetypal pattern of the scapegoat. In ancient rituals, the tribe would load the sins of the community upon the scapegoat and drive it into the wilderness. In modern times, the empath becomes the bearer of unconscious projections. Their love is reinterpreted as threat, their presence as accusation. The other, rather than confront the shadow, drives the empath away. And tragically, the empath often accepts this role, internalizing guilt that never belonged to them. To love those who fear you is to stand at the threshold of individuation. It forces you to ask, is my love truly love, or is it an unconscious attempt to heal my own wound by recreating it in another? Do I extend compassion because I see the divine spark in the other, or because I cannot bear to see my own loneliness mirrored back to me? Such questions are not comfortable, but they are the beginning of liberation. Individuation is not about becoming free of love, but about making love conscious, so that it flows not from compulsion but from wholeness. In the mythic sense, the empath resembles Persephone, descending again and again into the underworld, drawn by an invisible thread toward those trapped in darkness. Persephone cannot resist, for she carries within her the archetype of the guide, the psychopomp who moves between worlds, but the danger is that she may forget the path back to the surface. The empath, too, must learn not only to descend, but to ascend, to return to their own light, to nourish themselves, to refuse to become captive to another's fear. Consider the symbol of the serpent. In many cultures, the serpent represents both healing and danger, life and death. The empath is like the serpent bringing healing energy, but provoking terror in those who see only poison. The serpent sheds its skin, and so too must the empath shed the compulsion to be accepted by all. To embody empathy consciously is to accept that some will fear you, some will reject you. And this rejection is not a verdict on your worth, but a testimony to the depth of what you awaken. We are circling now around the heart of the paradox. Love, when it is authentic, is not safe. It disturbs, it unsettles, it calls forth what has been buried. To love is to risk being feared, and to be empathic is to accept that one's very being may summon reactions one cannot control. The task of the empath, then, is not to stop loving, but to learn the alchemy of transforming compulsive love into conscious love. Compulsive love binds you to those who fear you, like chains in the unconscious. Conscious love frees you to extend compassion without entanglement, to give without needing to be received, to see without being destroyed by what you see. I tell you, those who fear you are not your enemies, they are mirrors. They reveal to you the very pattern that must be made conscious. They invite you to withdraw from the repetition of childhood pain and to reclaim the gift of empathy as your own, not as a burden, but as a vocation. When you understand this, you no longer chase those who cannot receive you. You stand in your own center, and from that center, your love flows like a river, not seeking to conquer, not seeking to be needed, but simply being. And yet, to reach this place requires descent. It requires facing the loneliness of knowing that your love will not always be welcomed. It requires enduring the fear that perhaps you are too much, too intense, too strange. But in truth, you are not too much. You are exactly what you are meant to be, a vessel of the self, carrying into the world the possibility of healing. Those who cannot receive you are simply not yet ready to face themselves. Their fear is not your burden. Your task is to see this clearly, to release them without hatred, and to continue the work of individuation. This is why empaths keep loving those who secretly fear them, because the unconscious seeks healing through repetition. The empath returns to the scene of the original wound until they realize the truth, that they cannot heal the other by pouring themselves out. They can only heal by turning within, by embracing their own shadow, by loving themselves enough to step out of the cycle. Then, and only then, does empathy become a conscious gift rather than a compulsive curse. When you begin to see this pattern, a strange sorrow often rises in you. You realize that your devotion has not been met in kind, that those you loved most deeply were not rejecting you as a person, but fleeing from their own unveiled soul. It is a revelation, both liberating and heartbreaking. You understand that it was never your task to convince them of your harmlessness, never your duty to prove that your love was safe. For the unconscious does not respond to reason, it responds to symbols, to shadows, to the ancient fear of being seen naked before the inner mirror. This is why their fear lingered, despite your kindness. To be touched by the gaze of an empath is to be stripped of disguise, and not every ego can survive that exposure. You must ask yourself why you continue to love even as fear surrounded you. Here we encounter the archetype of the wounded healer. The one who has suffered learns to heal, but in healing others, they secretly attempt to heal the wound in themselves. The empath loves compulsively because the inner child longs for the day when love will not be met with fear, when their openness will not be punished, when their tenderness will not be misinterpreted as threat. So you choose again and again those who cannot receive you, as if hoping that this time the ancient story will change. But the unconscious is ruthless. It repeats until you become conscious. The repetition is not punishment, it is initiation. Let me take you deeper still. Imagine the dream in which you are walking through a vast forest at night. Each tree whispers, and behind the trees are eyes watching. You carry a lantern, and the glow of your lantern draws the fearful closer. Yet, as soon as they reach the circle of light, they recoil. They say the light is too harsh, though it is gentle. They say you are too intense. Though you are quiet, you wander confused, holding the lantern higher, thinking perhaps more light will convince them. But the truth is that the lantern reveals what they cannot bear to see. Their own face is twisted with longing and shame. The dream does not ask you to dim your lantern, but to realize that not all will walk with you in its glow. Some are destined to remain among the shadows. For their time of awakening has not yet come. The empath must face the great temptation to extinguish the lantern in order to be accepted. How often have you dimmed yourself, softened your truth, hidden your vision, in the hope that those who feared you might draw nearer? And how often did this lead only to deeper emptiness? For in extinguishing the lantern, you betray not only yourself, but the self, that deeper force which entrusted you with light in the first place. The path of individuation demands courage, the courage to bear rejection without surrendering your authenticity. If you dim your lantern, you become complicit in the lie of repression. If you keep it lit, you risk solitude. Yet solitude is the price of wholeness. Now, why do they fear you? Let us not judge them too harshly. Fear is not always conscious. It is the instinctive recoil of the ego before the abyss of the unconscious. When you love with openness, you dissolve the protective walls behind which the other has hidden. Their fear is the panic of the prisoner when the cell door is opened. The outside world is too vast, too unstructured, too demanding of freedom. To be loved is to be invited into freedom, and many prefer the safety of chains. Thus they resist, not because your love is false, but because freedom terrifies the unready soul. The archetype of the animus and anima also plays a role here. When an empath loves, they often awaken in the other the repressed contrasexual image, the inner man in the woman. The inner woman in the man. This awakening is profoundly destabilizing. To be confronted by one's anima or animus through the mirror of another person is to face the entirety of the unlived life. No wonder they fear you. You embody the parts of themselves they have buried. You become the dream figure that disrupts their certainty, the unexpected intruder who summons forgotten longings. They project this inner figure onto you, and because they cannot integrate it, they accuse you of being overwhelming, frightening, dangerous. You are not. You are simply the mirror. But mirrors have always been treated with suspicion in myth, for they reveal too much. The empath must therefore learn the wisdom of detachment. Love does not mean enslavement to another's unconscious. Compassion does not mean tolerating projection until your soul is shredded. To love truly is to love from a place of freedom where you are no longer chained to the hope that the other will finally see you. You must see yourself. Only then can your love flow without demand, without the compulsion to fix, without the hunger for reciprocation. This is the secret alchemy, to turn the wound of rejection into the gold of individuation. I've often said that what is unconscious will be lived as fate. Until you recognize this pattern, you will believe you are unlucky in love, cursed to choose those who fear you. But once you see it, once you bring it into consciousness, you recognize it not as fate but as message. The self was teaching you all along. It was saying, stop pouring your essence into the abyss of another shadow. Return to yourself. Integrate your own shadow. And in doing so, you will no longer be compelled to dance with those who run from the light. Then love becomes choice rather than compulsion. Do you not see? The very fact that they fear you is proof of your power, not worldly power. But psychic presence, your empathy is not weakness. It is intensity. To feel is to carry within you the collective pain and longing of humanity. Few can bear such presence without trembling. You are a reminder of what they deny, and reminders are seldom welcomed, but you must not confuse their fear with your unworthiness. Their fear is theirs, not yours. Your task is to disentangle yourself from their projections, to stand upright in your own essence, to continue shining the lantern. Whether or not they follow, I will tell you of another dream. A woman dreamt she was carrying a small flame through a cavern. Others followed her, but when the cavern narrowed, they screamed that her flame was dangerous, that it would burn them. She tried to hide the flame under her cloak, and in doing so, she nearly suffocated. When she awoke, she realized the flame was her gift. Her empathy, her capacity to love. The dream told her that to hide it was to kill herself, and so she chose to walk with the flame uncovered, even if she walked alone. This is the destiny of the empath. You cannot extinguish your nature without destroying your soul. So I say to you, love, but love consciously. Do not love in order to be healed. Do not love in order to be accepted. Love because love is the nature of the self. And let those who fear you depart without bitterness. Their fear is the teacher that points you back to yourself. When you no longer chase their acceptance, you will find that you are free. And in that freedom, you will meet those who can stand in the light without trembling. They exist, but you cannot find them while you are bound to the compulsion to heal the unwilling. The paradox remains. Empaths keep loving those who secretly fear them because the unconscious demands that the pattern be lived until it is seen. Once it is seen, it no longer binds. Then love is no longer a wound repeating itself, but a conscious force flowing from the depths of the self. And in that love, you are no longer prisoner to rejection, but free participant in the great dance of souls. There is a moment in every empath's journey when the question turns inward, when the voice no longer asks, "Why do they fear me?" but whispers, "Why do I still seek those who fear me?" This is the moment when the axis of consciousness shifts. You begin to see that the compulsion is not driven by love alone, but by a hunger for resolution. The child within you longs to rewrite history, to find in another's eyes the acceptance that once was withheld. But history does not rewrite itself by repetition. It repeats until consciousness intervenes. This is why your soul draws you back to the same stage, the same faces, the same rejection, until you realize that the play is no longer necessary. When you awaken, you walk out of the theater, and yet, before that awakening, you are drawn by an invisible magnet. Those who fear you often carry the very qualities you have not yet integrated in yourself. Their fear is a mirror of your own unconscious dread that your love is too much, that your seeing will isolate you, that your openness will leave you abandoned. And so you are attracted to them, not because they are safe, but because they embody your own shadow. In their rejection, you see reflected your own hidden terror of rejection. This is why you cannot let go easily. You are not only in love with them, you are in love with a chance to heal your own split. But the psyche does not allow shortcuts. The healing must be undertaken within. No lover, no friend, no fearful soul can do it for you. Let me speak now of the archetypal battlefield. In mythology, the hero often encounters the dragon guarding the treasure. The empath imagines the treasure to be the love of the other, but the true treasure is self-realization. The dragon is the projection of fear, both theirs and yours. You fight it not by slaying the other, not by conquering their resistance, but by confronting the part of yourself that believes love must be earned through suffering. The dragon's breath is the smoke of illusion. Once you pierce it with the sword of consciousness, you see clearly the treasure was never outside you. It was the capacity to stand in your own light without trembling, to hold your lantern high without apology. Consider how dreams reveal this. I recall a dream told to me by a man who was deeply empathic. In his dream, he was standing in a marketplace, holding out bread to strangers. Some accepted it with gratitude, but others shrieked as if the bread were poisoned. He woke distraught, asking why his offering was treated as a threat. I told him the bread was his love, his empathy, his gift of presence. Those who shrieked represented the parts of humanity that cannot accept nourishment, because to receive it would mean confronting their own hunger. They feared the bread not because it was poisoned, but because it revealed their starvation. This is the drama of the empath. You bring nourishment, but nourishment terrifies those who prefer to believe they are not hungry. It is necessary to understand that empathy itself is archetypal. It belongs to the great mother, the archetype of nurturing, containing, embracing. To stand in this archetype is to hold immense psychic power. Those who have been wounded by the mother, whether through neglect, rejection, or domination, will react to you not as individual, but as symbol. They will fear the engulfment they once felt, or the rejection they once endured, and they will project this onto you. Thus you become too much, too overwhelming, too dangerous. Even when your love is gentle, the reaction is not to you, but to the archetype you carry. Understanding this frees you from personalizing their fear. You realize you are encountering ancient psychic forces that move through the collective, not merely private drama. The empath's path is to differentiate, to step out of the archetype and into individuality. Yes, you carry the Great Mother, but you are not only the Great Mother. Yes, you bring light, but you are not only the flame. To individuate means to know that your empathy is one expression of the self, not the whole of it. When you over-identify with being the healer, the rescuer, the endless lover, you are swallowed by the archetype, and when you are swallowed, you become a victim to projection. But when you stand apart, when you hold your empathy as gift rather than identity, you regain freedom. You can offer compassion without compulsion. You can endure rejection without collapse. You can shine without needing every gaze to welcome the light. Let me tell you, the greatest danger for the empath is not that others fear them, but that they begin to fear themselves. When you internalize their suspicion, you start to wonder if your love is truly dangerous, if your presence is truly too much. This is the poison of projection. When it enters your veins, you begin to mistrust your own lantern. You hold it lower, dimmer, doubting its worth. This is precisely what the unconscious seeks to teach you through repetition, that you must reclaim trust in yourself. For until you do, you will continue to seek validation from those who cannot give it. And so the endless cycle spins. Only when you say, I no longer need them to see me in order to see myself, does the wheel break. The fear others project onto you is their shadow. But the compulsion to keep loving them despite the fear is your shadow. It is the part of you that cannot release the old wound, that still believes redemption will come from outside. To face this is to stand before your own abyss, to admit that the acceptance you sought in others was the acceptance you had not yet given yourself. This is a moment of initiation. You walk to the edge of the chasm and realize there is no bridge, no hand extended from the other side. You must leap inward into your own soul. There, in the depths, you find a child who once learned that love could not be trusted. You kneel before that child and embrace them, and in that embrace, the compulsion dissolves, for you no longer need the fearful other to play the role. You have completed the circle within. It is not an easy journey. Many resist it because it feels like death. To stop seeking love from those who fear you feels like betrayal of your deepest longing. But in truth, it is the opposite. It is fidelity to the self. You are not betraying love. You are purifying it. You are not abandoning the other. You are releasing them from the burden of carrying your shadow, and you are releasing yourself from the endless hunger that can never be satisfied outside. This is what individuation demands. It demands that you die to the old pattern so that you may be reborn as whole. Now imagine again the lantern dream. You stand in the forest, holding it high. Those who fear it remain in the shadows, whispering. But now, instead of chasing them, instead of hiding the light, You simply continue walking, the path unfolds beneath your feet, and then, from the distance, you see figures approaching who do not recoil, who step willingly into the circle of light, who even carry their own lanterns. You realize you were never meant to illuminate everyone. You were meant to find those who walk with you. Empathy is not universal obligation, it is resonance. Those who resonate will join you, and together the forest will glow. Thus, the question transforms. It is no longer, why do empaths keep loving those who fear them? But, how can the empath love consciously, without being bound to fear? The answer lies in integration. You must integrate your own shadow, the child's wound, the compulsion, to rescue the hunger for validation. When you hold these within yourself, you no longer project them outward, then your love is free, and the fearful no longer dominate your destiny. They may still recoil, but you no longer chase. You bless them and move on. And in that movement, you step into the fullness of individuation. You must not forget that every encounter between the empath and the one who fears them is a meeting of two unconscious worlds. It is not only personal, it is symbolic. The empath represents transparency, sensitivity, openness to the collective, unconscious. The fearful one represents repression, denial, the desperate clinging to the mask. Their meeting is inevitable, for the psyche seeks balance. Where one lives too openly, they will be drawn to those who live too defensively. Where one bleeds feeling, they will be pulled toward those who cannot feel at all. This is the dance of opposites, the alchemy of the soul. Yet, the purpose of the dance is not endless repetition, it is transformation. So let me guide you deeper still. To love someone who fears you is to confront the most ancient paradox. Eros and Thanatos entwined. The life force of love meets the death force of fear. And in that clash, sparks of transformation are born. It is painful, yes, but it is also sacred. For the soul does not evolve through comfort, it evolves through tension, through opposites colliding until a new synthesis emerges. You, as empath, are not cursed. You are participating in a mystery play, one that the unconscious has written long before you knew its script. Yet you are not doomed to remain on this stage forever. You are called to recognize the archetypal roles, and in that recognition, step off the stage. You do not have to play the healer to those who cannot be healed. You do not have to prove your love to those whose fear is stronger than their longing. You are free to walk into new relationships, new encounters, where love is not mistrusted, but welcomed. But that freedom comes only after you face the deepest shadow, your own fear of being unloved. For as long as you secretly believe that your worth depends on being accepted by those who fear you, you will remain chained. When you face the shadow and say, I am worthy whether they accept me or not, then you break the chain. Then you step into freedom. I must tell you a final dream. A dream where an empath stood before a river. On the opposite bank were figures who both longed for and recoiled from her. She reached her hands across, but the river grew wider each time. Exhausted, she fell to her knees, convinced she would never cross. Suddenly she looked down and saw that the river was not outside, but within her it was her own tears, her own grief, her own fear of being unloved. When she wept fully, when she allowed the river to flow through her without resistance, a bridge appeared. But this bridge did not lead to the fearful ones. It led back into her own heart. She crossed, and on the other side she found not them, but herself whole, radiant, unafraid. When she awoke, she understood that the task had never been to cross into their land, but to return fully to her own. This is the message I give you now. Your empathy is not a prison. It is not a curse. It is a lantern entrusted to you by the self, but you must learn how to carry it without burning yourself. You must learn that love is not meant to be poured endlessly into those who cannot drink. Love is meant to flow from your wholeness, not from your wound. When you heal the wound, when you embrace the shadow, when you accept yourself in fullness, then your empathy becomes strength rather than weakness. It becomes light that guides, not fire, that consumes. And when you reach that place, the paradox dissolves. You no longer keep loving those who fear you. You may love them, yes, but you do not cling. You do not chase. You do not lose yourself in their projection. You love freely. And when fear rises in them, you let it be theirs. You bless them and you move on. And in moving on, can you discover that not all fear you? Some are ready. Some can stand in your light without trembling. And when you meet them, the joy is profound. For it is love without chains. It is love that affirms rather than wounds, that expands rather than repeats. This is individuation. This is the path of wholeness. The empath's journey is not to cure the fear in others, but to cure the compulsion within themselves, to see the pattern, to embrace the shadow, to reclaim their worth, and to walk forward with lantern lifted high. Those who are ready will come. Those who are not will remain in the shadows. And both are, as they must be. The only question that remains is whether you will continue to bind yourself to their fear or whether you will walk into your own freedom. So I say to you, with the voice of the self echoing through these words, do not dim your light. Do not extinguish your empathy. Do not betray your essence for the comfort of another's fear. Stand in your truth. Love consciously. Carry your lantern without apology, for the world does not need you to be smaller. The world needs you as you are radiant, fierce, tender, whole. Those who fear you will teach you. Those who love you will walk with you. And you, finally, will belong to yourself.